The chains were still warm. I know that because I had been holding them for 3 miles coiled in my left hand, the iron heavy against my palm the way it always was, the way it had been for 32 years. My right hand kept the reins. My horse did not need guidance on this road. She had walked it before. But this man walking ahead of me, wrists bound, coat torn at the shoulder where he had tried to pull free, this man had baptized me. Not in a church with a roof. In a creek, knee-deep in November water, with 17 other people who had nothing but their belief that God saw them. He had pressed his hand against the back of my head. He had said, "You are known. You are kept." I was 31 years old. I had never owned anything. And now I was 43, and I wore a badge that said United States, and I was walking this man to Fort Smith in chains, and the morning was cold, and neither of us said a single word. By the end of this you will have to choose a side. My name is Reeves. And this is the story they never told you. They will tell you I was born in 1838, near Paris, Texas. That is true. What they will not tell you is what born meant for a man like me. It meant I was property before I was a person. It meant my mother's name was recorded in a ledger next to livestock. It meant my father's name was not recorded at all. The Reeves family owned us. That is where my surname comes from. Not from blood. From ownership. I grew up in Arkansas when the family moved to Lamar County. I learned to shoot early. My master, William Steele Reeves, then his son George, took pride in having a slave who could handle a rifle. They would show me off at shooting contests. I won. The prize money went to them. The ability stayed with me. That was the first thing I understood about this country. They will use what God put in you, and they will call the profit theirs. In 1862, I struck George Reeves. I do not regret it. There had been a card game. An argument. He raised his hand first. I hit him once, and I knew in that same second that I had just made myself a dead man or a free man. There was no third option. I ran north into the Indian Territory. The 5 civilized tribes held that land. Some of them owned slaves too. But it was land where a man could disappear. I disappeared for 13 years. I learned the languages. Cherokee, Creek, Seminole. I learned to track. I learned which creeks ran safe in spring. I learned the kind of quiet that keeps you alive. And I learned to pray. Not in any building. In the dark, in the brush, alone. In 1875, a man named James Fagan rode into the territory looking for me specifically. I want you to hold that detail for a moment. Not looking for someone who fit a description. Looking for Reeves, by name. Because Judge Isaac Parker at Fort Smith needed deputies who knew the Indian Territory, who could navigate it, speak its languages, survive it, and there were not many men, black or white, who could do all three. I was 37 years old. I had spent 13 years as a man who legally did not exist. No citizenship. No protection. no name on any government document. I was alive by skill and by grace, and I knew the difference between the two. Fagin offered me a badge. I need you to understand what that meant in 1875. The Reconstruction era was unraveling. Black men who had held office during those years were being pushed out by violence across the South. And here was a white federal judge, a man known for hanging outlaws without sentiment, offering a black man from the Indian Territory the legal authority to arrest anyone, of any race, in 75,000 square miles of unorganized land. I did not say yes immediately. I went to the creek where I had been baptized 2 years before. I knelt there for a long time. Long enough for the sun to move and the light to change on the water. I thought about my mother. I thought about what George Reeves had done with my gift for shooting, turned it into profit, called it his. Then I thought, what if I use it for something that cannot be taken from me? I said yes. For the next 32 years, I brought in more than 3,000 men and women wanted by the federal court. I was shot at many times. I was hit twice. I survived both. I lost 5 horses beneath me. I once rode 400 miles in January to bring in a man wanted for murder. The temperature dropped to 18 degrees on the 3rd night, and I stopped at a farmhouse, and the woman who opened the door looked at my badge and then at my face and decided the badge was more important. She let me in. She gave me coffee. She did not speak to me directly, but she let me in. That was the frontier in 1881. You understood what a person was willing to do by what they were willing to tolerate at their own table. I never killed a man I did not have to. 14 men died in confrontations with me across 3 decades. Every one of them had drawn first or was actively firing. Every one of them was given a chance to surrender. Art Burton, who spent years researching my life, wrote that my discipline was rooted in something deeper than professionalism. He is right. I did not spare men's lives because the regulations required it. I spared them because I had read the Gospel of Matthew 47 times by 1890. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. I believed that then. I still believe it. But belief is not the same as being spared the cost. By 1895, I was the most famous marshal in the Indian Territory. Newspapers in St. Louis wrote about me. A journalist from Ohio called me the black hero of the frontier. Judge Parker, a man who sentenced 160 men to death during his tenure, said publicly that I was the best lawman he had ever commanded. Not the best black lawman. The best lawman. I want to be honest with you. I felt something when I read that. Not pride exactly. Something closer to the feeling of being recognized after a long time of being looked past. I had spent my childhood as property. I had spent my young manhood as a ghost. And now, at 57 years old, the most powerful federal judge west of the Mississippi was saying my name in sentences that contained words like finest and remarkable and exceptional. I thought, maybe this is what God had in mind. Maybe this is the shape of it. I thought that for about 4 months. Then in 1896, the Supreme Court handed down its decision in Plessy v. Ferguson. Separate but equal. That was the law now. That was the United States I carried a badge for. I was 58 years old. I had ridden under the flag of that country through winter and drought and gunfire. I had put my body between chaos and law for 21 years. And the highest court in the nation had just announced, formally, in published opinion, that a man with my skin was legally permitted to be separated from full humanity. Separate but equal. I read those 3 words at my kitchen table. My wife Nellie was in the next room. I did not tell her what I had read. I folded the newspaper. I placed it at the bottom of a drawer. And I went back to work the next morning. Because the territory still needed policing. Because there were still families in those 75,000 miles who needed someone to come when no one else would. Because I had made a commitment to something larger than a court decision. But I want you to know that I noticed. I want you to know that I sat with it the specific weight of continuing to serve a flag that had just clarified its position on what I was. 43 people came to my church the following Sunday. I counted them. Twice. The pastor preached on Daniel in the lion's den. I listened to every word. Afterwards, a man came up to me, one of the younger deputies I had trained, and he said, "Marshal, how do you keep doing it?" I said, "The lions are still in the den." He laughed. I did not explain that I was not joking. Everything I just told you is true. 32 years. 3,000 arrests. A discipline rooted in mercy. A faith that held when the country showed me exactly what it thought of men who looked like me. All of that is true. But so is this. There is one document they did not want you to read, a court record from 1902, filed at the federal courthouse in Fort Smith, case number filed under the name United States v. Benjamin Reeves. It is 11 pages long. The handwriting on the arrest report is mine. Benny was my son. He was 28 years old. He had killed his wife, a woman named Nellie, same name as his mother, during an argument at their home. He had fled. The warrant had been issued. 2 other marshals had declined the assignment, quietly, because everyone in the territory knew whose son Benny was. The court asked me if I could serve the warrant. I said yes. The question I have never been able to fully answer, not in the 20 years I had left before I died, is why I said yes when I could have said no. There is one document they did not want you to read. I need to go back to 1884 first. Because you cannot understand 1902 without it. A man named William Leach was my cook. He traveled with me on long assignments, a common arrangement for marshals in the territory who spent weeks in the field. On the night of November 14, 1884, my rifle discharged during camp. William Leach was killed. I said it was an accident. A misfire while I was cleaning the weapon. The federal court in 1887 agreed, after investigation, that there was no evidence of intent. I was exonerated. The case was closed. But the case was never fully closed in the territory. People knew that Base Reeves had killed a man. They knew that the man was black, like me. They knew that the federal court-wide institution had cleared a black marshal of killing a black cook. I have thought about William Leach many times. His weight. His laugh. The way he made cornbread in the field with nothing but a tin pan and a fire. He had a daughter in Muskogee. Her name was Clara. She was 7 years old when her father did not come home. I went to Clara's mother after the trial. I stood at the door. She looked at me for a long time. She did not close the door. She also did not open it wider. She said, "You carry a badge they gave you. Base. But we all know what they gave it to you for." I have turned that sentence over in my mind for 26 years. What did she mean? That the badge was permission to operate in white legal space, which meant operating for white legal interests, even when the targets were my own people. Records from the Gateway to Oklahoma history show that of my 3,000 arrests, a significant number were of black and native men caught in the machinery of territorial lawmen running from poverty, from debt, from a system that had never been designed with their survival in mind. I brought them in. I brought them to Judge Parker's court, where the conviction rate was extraordinarily high and where black defendants received the same sentence as white defendants, which sounds like equality until you understand that the law itself was structured to catch certain kinds of men and not others. Separate but equal. The law does not care about the soul of the man who enforces it. The law cares about the arrest report. And I filed very clean arrest reports. Benny had been in trouble for years. I knew it. His mother knew it. His trouble was the kind of trouble that comes from growing up as the son of a famous man in a place where fame costs something, where people expect a performance of toughness from a young man whose father could outdraw, outride, and outthink almost anyone in the territory. Benny could not be me. He tried in the wrong directions. I had spoken to him 4 times in the 3 years before the warrant. Each time, I had said the same things fathers say. About choices. About consequence. About God knowing the secrets of men's hearts. Benny would listen. He would nod. He would leave. I had prayed for him specifically, on my knees, for 6 years straight. I am telling you that so you understand. When I rode out to serve that warrant, I was not indifferent. I was not detached. I was not the impartial instrument of the court. I was a father who had prayed for his son for 6 years and was now writing to put him in chains. I found Benny at a farmhouse 12 miles northeast of Muskogee. He did not run. He looked at me, at the badge, at the chains in my hand, and he said, "I knew it would be you." Not, "I knew they would send someone." Not, "I knew they would find me." I knew it would be you. Something passed between us that did not require words. I had not wept since my mother died in 1896. I did not weep then either. But I noticed the weight of the chains very acutely in that moment, the way they shifted in my grip, the specific sound of iron on iron when I fastened them to his wrists. He was convicted. He served his sentence. He was released. He outlived me by many years. But wait, there is something historians have hidden for centuries about what I did next. After I delivered Benny to Fort Smith and signed the transfer papers, I went to the courthouse chapel. It was empty at that hour. I sat in the third pew from the back, not the front, not the middle, the third pew from the back, where no one sits unless they are trying to be invisible, and I opened my Bible. I did not open it to a verse I knew. I let it fall open where it would. It fell to Job, chapter 3. Why did I not die at birth? Why did I not perish when I came from the womb? I read the whole chapter. Then I read chapter 4. Then chapter 5. I sat in that chapel for 2 hours and 40 minutes. I know because I watched the light move across the stone floor. I did not find an answer. I found something harder, the absence of an easy answer. The place where faith and duty meet, and neither one gives way, and you are left holding both, and your hands are very full, and you are very tired. This is what the historical record shows. Bass Reeves served as Deputy U.S. Marshal from October 5, 1875, until Oklahoma statehood in 1907, 32 years. He made more than 3,000 arrests, with 14 men killed in confrontations, all ruled justified. He was tried twice during his tenure, once for the death of William Leach 1887, acquitted, once for the death of a man named Ferris Foreman, acquitted. He was never convicted of any crime during his service. He was black, in a position of federal authority, during the worst decades of post-Reconstruction racial violence in American history. He died on January 12, 1910, in Muskogee, Oklahoma, of Bright's disease, kidney failure. He was 71 years old. His wife Nellie was at his side. His son Benny was alive and free in the same county. I do not know if they spoke before he died. The record does not say. Now 2 voices. You have heard both. Bass Reeves took the only form of power available to a black man in 1875 and used it with more discipline, more mercy, and more moral seriousness than almost any white man in the same position. He brought law to a lawless place. He spared lives he did not have to spare. He read the gospel and meant it. He arrested his own son because he believed, genuinely believed, that no man, not even his blood, was above the covenant of justice. That is not a man without a soul. That is a man with a soul large enough to bear what smaller men put down. The badge was real, but the system behind the badge was not neutral. 3,000 arrests, in a territory where black and native men were already trapped by poverty and dispossession, means 3,000 times that Bass Reeves was the mechanism by which federal power, white federal power, in a country that had just codified racial separation into law, reached into those communities and extracted someone. His mercy within the system does not redeem the system. His faith does not erase the question of whether a righteous man can do righteous work for an unrighteous institution without becoming, in some way, its instrument. Both of these voices are real. Both of them have evidence. Both of them live inside the same man, in the same body, wearing the same badge. I have spent a long time with Bass Reeves' story, and what stayed with me most was not the 3,000 arrests or the 14 deaths or even the arrest of his son. What stayed with me was the image of a man sitting in the third pew from the back of an empty chapel, not the front, where the certain go, not the middle, where the comfortable sit, but the third from the back, where you go when you're trying to be invisible to God and you know, already, that it will not work. That is where faith lives in the hard years. Not in the proclamation. In the pew, in the dark, with a Bible open to job, and no easy answer coming. The sources behind everything you heard today: Black Gun, Silver Star by R.T. Burton, published by the University of Nebraska Press. Records held at the Gateway to Oklahoma History. Case files from the federal court at Fort Smith, Arkansas. The Texas State Historical Association's documented accounts of Reeves' service record. And the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History's materials on Reconstruction era law enforcement. Full links to every source are in the description below. Because Reeves' story deserves more than legend. It deserves the truth. If something in this story is pressing against something inside you right now, if you are not sure which voice you believe, type badge in the comments. Let me know you are sitting with it. I read everyone. Now you know what I know. A man born into chains, who spent 13 years as a ghost, who took a badge from the hand of a white judge and carried it for 32 years through every temperature the frontier could produce. A man who read the gospel and meant it, and arrested 3,000 people, and lost one cook named William, and one son named Benny, and possibly this is the question, something inside himself that he could never fully name. 2,000 years of faith. 400 years of struggle. 32 years of a man walking the line between them. Holding chains. Holding a Bible. Holding both. Now, it is your turn. Reeves was a man of God doing God's work in the only form available to him. His faith was real. His justice was real. The cost was real and he paid it without complaint. No man can serve an unjust system with enough personal righteousness to make the service holy. Reeves was exceptional. The system was not. And exceptional men in broken systems do exceptional damage. Drop your answer below. A or B. And tell me why. Because 400 years of this history deserves more than silence. If you believe someone you love needs to sit with this question today, share this video right now. That is your gift to give them. He wore the badge they gave him. He carried the chains he was born into and the chains he chose. He sat in the third pew from the back. And God, who sees the third pew, saw him. Reeves. 1838–1910. Judge for yourself.